Hi, I'm Paul. For this video I'm going to talk a bit about stalking as requested by somebody. Uh, mm, so stalking can kind of vary from many of different people. It seems to be based on the idea of control. People who have extreme anxiety, which is usually quite hidden from the people who have the anxieties. Like if we look at psychopaths and sociopaths, we say that psychopaths don't experience fear or anxiety, but it turns out that's not actually true. They experience more anxiety and fear than anybody, but because of this, they've learnt to be so controlling over their input of the environment that they aren't able to see the anxiety or fear because of their control. So, to start off with the idea of stalking. So, let's look at how we work as normal people. So, the way that we think we know people isn't exactly quite right, because the whole idea of knowing somebody is actually the opposite to knowing them. Let me explain. So if I know you, you're a close friend, husband, wife, whatever, and then I say, I know exactly who you are. So this knowing who you are means that I have to go into my memory to describe you, which means that my memory isn't actually you. So the whole image that I'm going into is not the actual you. It's a judgment, a guess, maybe an educated guess, but still a guess. So the actual you, if I wanted to know you, would be for me not to try to judge you, describe you, or anything, because all of that comes from a place in my mind, and that my mind isn't actually you. Now this is important when it comes to stalking, because the way that a stalker would work is they would have an image of you inside of their head, a picture, an idea, a whole description of who you are. You see, because of the fear and anxiety and the desperate need to try to control all situations so that nothing surprises them or brings them to the true self, then they have to stick with that image of you inside of them. Quite often, this image wouldn't actually be you. It wouldn't even be close to you. So perhaps the image what I would have of you would be you're a thief, even though you've never stolen anything in your life, or you're a loser, or everybody laughs at you. You see, if I said everybody thinks you're a loser, everybody finds you stupid, or whatever in that sort of direction, then really what's actually happening is I feel so vulnerable, I need to focus everything on you. I need other people to focus on you, because you're my escape, my scapegoat. So all of my fear and anxiety I would project onto you. One thing to mention, stalkers, it doesn't really necessarily mean any form of relationship or sexual relationship or anything. It can just be between two people who've hardly ever met, work together. So this idea of having an image of you in my head, and I want to humiliate you. So therefore I have to have an image that you're embarrassing or stupid. So me having that image, very important if I'm really vulnerable and scared, afraid, fearful, anxious. It's very important for me to hold that image of you. But the trouble is, you become a threat. Because this image that I've got of you in my head isn't you. I don't know this, because I only see one image. But every time you behave outside of the box of the image that I've got inside of my head of you, starts to make me see a tiny little bit of my anxiety. So I have to keep control of you. Therefore, I have to try to humiliate you in front of people all around me, because I need other people to back me up to justify the story that's in my head because you're not doing. So in essence, I'm playing around essentially with a fantasy in my head. It isn't you, but I'm playing with that fantasy, and the reason why I'm playing with that fantasy is because of my fear of letting anything in that could disrupt my fantasy, because then I would see my real self, and my real self is a whole bundle of anxiety and fear. On some occasions, people who do stalk, especially if you are close to them, can have extreme temper swings. Let's say they can go from 0 to 100 of anger. Usually when this happens is when you start to break the image, when the real you starts to come through, and this distorts my image, and then I have to gain extreme control back. I have to gain control of you. So let's just say if I was in a relationship, married or whichever way, and I have an extreme control issue. See, in this situation, I don't really recognize that I would be a stalker as such, because everything's in control. I have you at home, doing all the house chores and try to make it awkward for you to go out and do your own thing. You see, in this position, I have you in control. So there's no real reason for me to feel threatened or even think about you, because you're in control. Let's just say then I find out that you've gone out, you've gone and done something that you really enjoyed doing. This would make me see you, because then I'd be questioning, where have you gone, what have you been up to, what have you done? And this would take you away from the image inside of my head that I have of you. This would trigger off alarm bells. You're not in control, I don't have control of you. And this whole control idea is to have you synchronized with the image in my head that I created of you. That's the idea of control, just to make sure that you don't step out and then trigger off what's inside of me. But like I say, this can happen not just in relationships in general, but one thing I do notice is when somebody does get into this situation, the stalker has somebody in mind, or somebody trying to control somebody, they can't get rid of it. They can't get it out of their head. They don't even realize it's actually in their head, because they're constantly focusing on you're the fault, you're the problem, you're this, you're my entertainment. See, let's look at how this starts off. So I don't know whether you've heard of this scenario of I want to live rent-free in your head, which just means I want you to be thinking about me. So let's just say that I'm the stalker or narcissist, sociopath, psychopath. So let's just say I'm that, and I want to gain I want to live rent-free in your head. So firstly, what do I have to do? Firstly, I have to study you, become obsessed with you, which just means now you're in my head. Sometimes I don't even have to do that. Sometimes I just have to see you for a split second and go, perfect target, even though I don't notice that I'm doing that. But all of a sudden I take a snapshot of you and put that snapshot in my head and then start to play with it. And once that snapshot's in my head, I can't get rid of it. So then I have to start to become stalking, obsessing about you, trying to learn everything I can about you. So if I'm the stalker or the controlling person, then I would be believing that I'm trying to get to live rent-free in your head. But the truth is, you're already living rent-free in my head, and I don't want you there. But because I have no access of inside of my internal world, I can't get rid of you. So the only way of smoothing it over is trying to get you under control so that you synchronize with the object that I've got in my head. And if that does start to happen, what I start to do with you is turn you into all the things inside of me that I hate about myself, all them traumas that happened to me as a child. I try to turn you into that so that I can project all of them things onto you, and therefore I've gained full control and I don't see the problems in me but see the problems in you. Another way of describing it is an external locus of control. I have no access to my internal world. I can't change it, so because I have no access. My internal world is a world of emotions running free and I can't do anything about it, so how do I try to control my internal world, my emotions? Well, I do that by trying to control everything outside. I try to put myself in situations what I know would be safe and keep out of other situations, keep a scapegoat at hand so that I can project onto them. And if anybody comes pointing fingers at me, I could direct them straight onto them. I can control what people say by speaking louder or getting more angry. And the whole purpose of this is trying to control the external world to fulfill the needs of the internal world, because I have no access of my internal world to be able to control it. So I have to gain extreme control of the outside world. And this is pretty much how stalking works, how narcissists and psychopaths work. Narcissists are kind of stalkers and controlling in a way, but they really believe that they're right. They really believe that the image inside of their head is of you, the real you. And psychopaths tend to be a little bit different because they seem to have a little bit more control and more planning. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say. Thanks so much for listening.